carry it, we see it staying at this person's house or that person's house. So the tabernacle is not. The tabernacle of David and the tabernacle of Moses are two different things. What does the word tabernacle or booth mean? It means tent or dwelling. So what is the dwelling of David? How do we refer to dwelling places today? We say house. The house of David will be rebuilt. In the final day, in the final days, in the end times, the house of David will be rebuilt. What's he talking about? The house of David. When you hear the house of a king, what are they talking about? They're not the followers, the children, the line of David, the house of David, the family of David, the line, the ruler of David, David's rulers. So we're talking about the kings that are following after David. Well, who does he mean? On that day, David, the Davidic king, will be reestablished. Who is he talking about? This one should be obvious. Who is it? Jesus. He says, on that day, I will rebuild the line, the dwelling, the house of David, which has fallen. Why has it fallen? Because David is no longer king. When does God reestablish it? In Bethlehem, 2,000 years ago. Remember, he's quoting Amos. He's quoting Amos, who lived hundreds of years before Jesus. So he says, on that day, which day? The final days, the end times. When do the end times start? It starts when Jesus comes and finishes when Jesus comes again. So I will set up, I will rebuild that house of David, I will set it up. So that, what? What is the purpose of reestablishing the house of David? So that all other peoples may seek the Lord. What happened when Jesus came? He died on the cross. He was resurrected. And how did salvation come about? How did people become the people of God? Through faith in Jesus. So he sets it up so that other peoples may seek the Lord. Not just Jews. We're not limiting it now. From now on, it's going to be anybody and everybody who wants to believe in Jesus. They can be God's people. Even us dirty Gentiles. Even us sinners who don't follow the law of Moses, who aren't circumcised. Even we may seek the Lord and be found. Well, what does it say down here? It's interesting to see what does James change. Because he's quoting it from memory. He's not reading it. And so there's a couple things that change. So I will repair its breaches, the house of David. I will raise up its ruins and rebuild it as in the days of old. So we have a dual fulfillment prophecy here, right? In order that they may possess the remnant of Edom. That sounds different. That sounds different than what we're saying up here. And all the nations who are called by my name. What's that phrase mean? Called by my name? That means they are people of God. That means they are God's people. They are followers of God. They are believers. They are God's people. So, when we compare these two, we see some differences. The remnant of Edom. Edom actually is, in Hebrew, they don't have vowels. They just have consonants. So Edom is just DM, because there's no vowels. Can you think of another name that has DM in it with two syllables? Say it again. Adam. Adam. And who is Adam? Adam is all people. Well, let's look back and see. Let's see what it says up here. So that all other peoples. All peoples. Well, who are all peoples? They are the descendants of Adam. And so what we see is James is reading DM, and he is reading Adam. And he, in his mind, is saying all peoples. All other peoples. The whole world. So that anybody over the world, even dirty Gentiles, can come to know Jesus. Any of the descendants of Adam can come to have faith in Jesus. And this is supported by the Greek translation of the Old Testament, which includes some of our oldest copies. And they translate this in Greek as as anthropos, anthropology, the study of people. So they say all people. So, and all the nations who are called by my name, over all the Gentiles over whom my name has been called. This is a bad translation. Over whom my name has been called. This is actually a bad translation in the NRSV. If you read some other translation, they will say, who are called by my name. And again, so all Gentiles who are called by my name. What does that mean? The followers of Christ. Thus says the Lord, who has been making these things known from long ago. But look at the interesting difference. It says, thus says the Lord, who does this. Why is James saying who has making these things known from long ago? And notice there's a quotation. The end of the quotation is here. Why is he emphasizing that he made these things known from long ago? It's because of the question that is being asked. The question is, James, how can we be sure that God is really blessing the Gentiles? We see these amazing things happening, but how can we be sure? James says, God made it known from long ago through the prophets that this was how he was going to make things work. So therefore, James says in the next verse, verse 19, I have reached the decision. He is the leader, or at least a very powerful leader in the church. I have reached the decision that we should not trouble the Gentiles who are turning to God, but we should write to them to do 4 things. He lists 4 things that they should do. Abstain from things polluted by idols. Abstain from fornication. Abstain from eating things that have been strangled. And abstain from eating blood. We're going to look very briefly at each of these things. So first he says to abstain from things that are polluted by idols. He gets all of these, by the way, from Leviticus chapter 17 and 18. And these are the things that all people who are living in Israel among the Jews are supposed to do if they want to live among the Jews. If, in Leviticus it says, if anybody's living among you, they must do these 4 things, and then they're allowed to live with you. That's going to become important in just a minute. So he says, abstain only from things polluted by idols. Leviticus 7:8 says, and say to them further, anyone of the house of Israel, or the aliens who reside among them, who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, and unfortunately I cut that one off too soon, and I don't have it, so you're going to have to hold with me for just a second as I turn to Leviticus chapter 17, verse 8 and 9. Say to them, further, anyone of the house of Israel, or the aliens who reside among them, who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting, to sacrifice it to the Lord, shall be cut off from the people. The only sacrifice we are supposed to make is to God, not to idols. And so, he says, any alien who wants to sacrifice anything cannot, in fact, offer it to an idol, only to the true and living God, if they want to live in Israel. If they don't want to follow this, they have to be cut off from the people and kicked out of the country. Next he says, from fornication. Let's go to the next slide. Chapter 18 gives a long list of all sorts of fornication that we're not supposed to do, including looking at the nakedness of your father, looking at the nakedness of your father's wife, looking at the nakedness of your mother, looking at the nakedness of your mother's wife, looking at the nakedness of your sister, your brother, and it goes on and on, including things like homosexuality and bestiality, and it gives all these things. It says, but these are a perversion of God's plan. And then it picks up here in verse 18. It says, do not defile yourself in any of these ways. All these ways that are listed here before in verses 6 to 23. For by all these practices the nations I am casting out before you have defiled themselves. Thus the land became defiled. So God says, people who were here before you, they did these things. That's why I'm kicking them out. So don't you do it too. And so, see, the inhabitants of this land are supposed to abstain from any sort of sexual perversion, any sort of illicit sexual activity. This is just one of the places where this is said, but in this context, it's talking about whoever commits any of these abominations shall be cut off